Bigfoot has terrorized and haunted these northern woods for centuries, occasionally making its appearance to unsuspecting travelers. These are their stories about the times they've encountered this terrifying monster. Memorial Day weekend is the perfect time to get out in those woods and do a bit of camping, but would you ever do it by yourself? This was uploaded from a now deleted account, but they recall their experience with the legendary Bigfoot himself. One night, while they were in the middle of their camping trip, they began to drift off at around midnight. Suddenly, out of nowhere, they began to hear heavy cracking sounds. Something with intense weight was walking along near their campsite, crushing twigs and logs with every step. Soon after, the sound of coyotes shrieking were heard on either side of his tent. There was something out there that was causing these animals to panic. Out of fear, the person began to whistle and yell to try and scare the creature off. It seemed to have worked for a decent amount of time, but when the shrieks and cracks started back up again, wasting no time once the sun rose, the camper packed everything up and quickly left the site. In the summer of 1977, there were allegedly 2 reports done on a supposed Bigfoot making its striking appearance in a small neighborhood. One report stated that late in the night, their dog had started going berserk towards the backyard, barking at something through the sliding glass door. The owner simply thought the dog needed to go out, so he opened the door and allowed the animal to run about. Not even a minute had gone by until the dog was back at the door, whimpering and scratching at the glass to be led back in. When the owner tried to see what spooked their dog so much, they saw the 8-foot monster at the very back of their property, right in front of the tree line. The other instance happened with a boy and his pals while they were playing hide and seek in the neighborhood. He decided to stay hidden behind that same man's house who first spotted the Bigfoot. He began to hear strange sounds coming from the garage, and thinking that it was his buddies, he peered around the corner. There, he saw a large, hairy creature on 2 legs sneak its way from outside the garage, running back into the woods. One British explorer in 1951 discovered bizarre footprints in the snow, and he swears to this day that they were not made by any regular animal. The prints were also found way up high in the Himalayas, specifically at 19,000 feet. These bad boys measured up to about 13 inches, and the photo he decided to take of them went wild. People began to truly believe that the Yeti/Bigfoot was real because of this, and to this day no one truly knows if it was made up or completely true. And keep in mind, this was before the Patterson videos in 1967, so for this to emerge out of nowhere definitely shook the public. But this isn't the first time that Yetis had been spotted in the Himalayas. There are several cases that people have made throughout the years of seeing footprints and big creatures roaming around these mountains. For those of you who have been there, have you seen anything strange? This one is a little far-fetched, but the original poster swears that this story is true. This comes from the perspective of their father, who in the late 1940s and early 50s had an extremely rough childhood with their father. But when nightfall came, the man recalled some large, hairy creature always coming into their room and comforting them. This happened on several occasions, but for some reason he always kept this a secret from anybody else in the family, terrified that if he told anyone, the creature would stop coming. After shrugging it off as he got older as nothing more than his own mind trying to comfort him, the rumors of Bigfoot in the area that were being told by the local news station made him think otherwise. Did Bigfoot sense the unfair dynamics in the house? We may never know, but the man's own children keep telling his story to keep his legacy alive. Being alone in a cemetery at night is already terrifying in itself, but what if you came across the supposed Bigfoot there? This tale comes from someone who recalls hearing Bigfoot calls while they were out walking along the spooky paths with their dog, when all of a sudden, as they describe it, they heard an intense bark that was a mix of a 500-pound Rottweiler and a freight train. It was bizarre because although it sounded like this was coming from 80 yards within the woods, at the same time it was as if it was right next to their ear. The dog as well switched to high alert mode, paws firmly planted into the ground as its eyes were lasered focused on the tree line. That's when this person's adrenaline began to kick in, the hair on the back of their neck standing up, and with no time to spare, they pulled their dog's leash, who was hesitant at first to turn their back on the woods, but began to hightail out of there. You can always trust Boy Scouts to report anything spooky or scary out in the wilderness, being exposed to such environments. Two younger folk decided to take it upon themselves to go on a hike out in Arkansas' Butterfield hiking trail. Over time, however, the deeper they allowed themselves to travel into the woods, they found themselves lost. Thankfully though, eventually they came across what appeared to be a well-traveled trail. Whether it was from other people or animals, who was to say for sure? As they were taking a rest, their break was cut short by a loud, guttural, animalistic scream nearby. His buddy, who was arguably braver than the two, decided to go check out what that sound was. Not even for a minute while he was away did he see his buddy run back in the opposite direction, screams leaving his mouth as he zoomed past his partner. Confused, the other guy looked towards the direction he was running from, and for a split second got a chance to see a giant, hairy, black-colored creature in the far-off distance. Not wanting to stick around and find out, the guy followed his friend close behind. Did you know Theodore Roosevelt also wrote down his Bigfoot encounter? This was while he was in the mountains with a wilderness hunter named Bauman. In Theodore's book, it states, Theodore returned and took another, repeating his inspection of the footprints very closely. Coming back to the fire, he stood by it a minute or two, peering out into the darkness, and suddenly remarked, Bauman, that bear has been walking on two legs. Of course, well-renowned mountain explorer Bauman laughed at this statement, not really taking it seriously. But even when he also examined the footprints up close with a torch, it was odd that it seemed to be made by two paws instead of four. He shrugged it off though, stating that it was too dark to really analyze it. They discussed this for the majority of the night, and came to an understanding that not even a human could have created those prints. When they finally did manage to get some sleep, Bauman woke up to strange sounds and a foul-smelling odor from some creature, and there, out in the distance, was a giant, hairy monster overlooking the two of them. Bauman warned the creature off, which thankfully worked. Since then, this expert from Theodore's novel had sparked curiosity within the masses for decades. This man recalls an experience he had with Bigfoot in his early 20s, when choosing to disconnect with the world for a little bit, wanting to rekindle his spark for nature. In the middle of the night though, when he finally found the will to drift off into sleep, a loud whooping sound pulled him from his attempt at slumber. At first, he thought this was an extremely loud owl making these sounds, and thought nothing of it for the time being. It wasn't until he flipped on the television years later on an episode of Survivormen when they were talking about that same whooping sound. It was the exact same noise he had heard all those years ago, and the episode described the sound as legendary Bigfoot call. Some would have thought this would be the start of the beginning of a Bigfoot hunt, but no. The man instead developed a horrible phobia of the mountains after that, and sadly never took a camping trip up there again. This next tale was uploaded by an anonymous user, who claims that they didn't want to be tracked down because of the amount of negative feedback that they had been getting on their Bigfoot tale. All the way up in northern Alberta, an ex-college student claims to have seen the monster one night while he and his buddies were out having a drink. They were completely sloshed, tripping over their feet and over each other as they walked home from the university pub. Along their path there was a forest, and considering how dark it was already, you couldn't really see anything through its thick brush. Through their giggles, one of the guys stops in their tracks and looks over to the tree line. "Do you see that thing?" he asked his buddy, slurring his words. Our main guy tries to see what they were seeing, but before they can get a good look, his buddy grabs him and begins to run, tripping over his own feet a few times before they finally found their footing. By the time they got back to their dorm, the friend who apparently saw something just kept mumbling "huge, effing huge" over and over. The next morning, when the guy tried to question him again about what he saw, he couldn't recall the incident at all. Jogging is great for your health. You get out and you get your heart pumping and even throw in some tunes. However, sometimes it's always wise to keep one earbud out at all times, and this encounter with Bigfoot taught our poster a huge lesson. They recall taking an early morning jog on a nearby trail next to their town. It was quiet, secluded, no one would bother them. Something felt off though, and the person constantly felt like they were being watched. Not being able to shake off the feeling, they began to slow down, which turned out to be a big mistake. Not even a minute rolls by when they feel something slam up hard against their back, knocking them forward into the dirt. There they remained knocked out for a little while, and by the time they woke back up, they saw the sun was now in the middle of the sky. They were knocked unconscious until midday. Looking around their surroundings, a little dazed, they saw nothing around them. Adrenaline now kicking in, they shoved their earpods into their pocket and cautiously walked home. They had reported what happened to the local authorities, and they immediately sent out a search party. To no one's surprise, they found nothing, and to this day the runner has no clue who or what knocked them unconscious.
Bigfoot is very much still around, as a hunter has just came forward about an encounter he had with the beast on December 28, 2024 in Washington. Now, a man named Andrew Baum was perched in a 17-foot high tree stand for hunting when he claims that he saw Bigfoot walking around on the forest floor. It was taking real long strides, his head was kinda down, moving down the hill, it had a big head, I lost it when it walked into the tree line, he said. Now, this happened in the late afternoon, so the sun was still out, and Andrew is convinced that he saw what he saw. He later said, "I know every animal. It was not a bear, it was not a monkey, it was black or even brown in color. I was shocked. A Bigfoot is not something that just pops up in your head," he said. Now, the creature moved rapidly with large, long steps, and it took me a moment to focus my eyes. Then I knew it was too big and moving too fast. A man would have to be running full speed to cross the field that quickly, Andrew said. So, hey, I guess it's a good thing that he was up in that tree when this incident happened. Now, this Reddit user posted their experience they had with Bigfoot this past fall in Wisconsin. They said that they own several hundreds of acres, which includes timber and a marshy swamp/bog, and that throughout the land there are various food plots and deer stands. One day the user went out to check them, and everything seemed normal until they came to one of the plots by the marshy swamp. The food plot had been completely torn up, and there were what appeared to be half-eaten winesap apples everywhere. Now, they realized that a deer couldn't have done this, and then they heard something moving through the swamp at what seemed to be a very brisk walk or jog. They then saw what appeared to be a 400-pound ape-like man rooting around in leafy debris on the ground. This was approximately 75 to 100 yards from where they were standing, so they, and I quote, "stood in fear as I witnessed some type of large humanoid kicking up what appeared to be donkey apples." They continued on by saying, "As I moved in to try to get a closer look, I noticed that this beast was head to toe in what appeared to be long, thick, greasy looking hair. My foot must have snapped a twig because the ape-like creature stood up and sprinted off." Now, after they were sure that the creature had left, they went to where it was and found even more apples. They added that this was one of the craziest experiences in their life and that they now believe in Bigfoot. But honestly, if I had that encounter, I'd believe too. In October 2023, a Bigfoot video filmed in Colorado went viral online. And let me tell you, it had a lot of us convinced. Stenson Parker and his wife Shannon recently took a trip through Colorado to celebrate their 10th anniversary. They boarded the Durango and Silverton narrow gauge railroad and saw something unexpected: Bigfoot. Now, the video, which was taken by a fellow passenger and posted online by Stenson, shows a tall brownish creature walking and squatting before it blends into its surroundings. Now, the footage is zoomed in, making for a grainy video, but to him, Stenson said, the creature didn't look like a human. It didn't move like a person, it looked more like an ape, but it didn't walk like an ape so much. He then added that the creature's arms seemed too long to be human, with its hands reaching down to its knees. It didn't look like anything I've ever seen before, he said. I don't think it was a hoax, and if it was a really good one. Now, this video went absolutely viral online, and many people believe that they saw Bigfoot that day. Now, a hunter once claimed he encountered Bigfoot and unveiled shocking photo proof to the world after setting up cameras outside his house. Craig Sulk really loved hunting with his wife, and to increase the odds of their hunting success, Craig set up a number of trail cams on his land. In 2012, one of the cameras snapped a mysterious figure that didn't appear to be an animal or a human. Now, luckily, Craig was a big fan of the show Finding Bigfoot on Animal Planet, and he knew exactly what he had to do. He reached out to the TV channel and showed the producers the images captured on his cameras. Now, Animal Planet was massively impressed by the fact that Craig had managed to get 3 snaps of the mysterious creature, so they filmed an episode with him. Now, after the episode aired, Craig was suddenly a star, and he was flooded with phone calls and visits from Americans who wanted to share their own bizarre paranormal experiences. Now, Craig and his wife soon opened their land up to the world and let anyone come out and examine the spot where Bigfoot was seen and take pictures and judge for themselves. Imagine trying to have a relaxing weekend at your cottage and then you stumble upon Bigfoot. Yeah, well, that's exactly what happened to this family. The first night, they just heard Bigfoot, or what they believed to be two different Bigfoot creatures, communicating. The man said it was fairly obvious that the sounds were coming from two areas about 15 degrees apart. There was also the noise of wood breaking and banging that was quite loud. We stepped out onto the deck to listen better. It was fairly obvious that one noise was getting closer to the other. The noises were really loud, and it sounded like mayhem was breaking loose, trees being smacked and banging noises, shouts and whoops. Then it went quiet really quickly, which was followed by a series of deep whooping noises and clicks, which went on intermittently past the point I went to sleep. Now that is just unsettling, but the next day he actually saw one of these creatures. He said, the next day I saw this big black brown thing sitting on a boulder about 20 feet above the water. I thought at first it was a bear, but when a bear sits, its legs just stick out in front slightly splayed. This thing had knees, and it was sitting with its knees up near its chest. I was not sure of what I was seeing, so I looked away and went back at it. I was not mistaken, it had knees and was covered with hair with no neck, and then slapped its hands on the rock about 3 times, both hands at the same time. It looked kind of straggly and matted. It was huge on top like the chest area, but it had scrawny by comparison legs, and the hair on its legs was thinner and lighter. The thing just stood up and walked into a bush behind it. Now, to me, this seems like Bigfoot just wanted to enjoy the cottage views as well. Now, at one point, a Bigfoot sighting actually turned into a federal investigation after a man fired his weapon inside a national park in Kentucky. Brad Ginn told news outlets that he and his girlfriend were camping nearby and were awakened about 1 a.m. by a man with his son. We got out of the tent and saw a man who told us their campsite had been destroyed by someone or something. The man, who was with his son, showed them the weapon on his hip and told them that the area was popular for Bigfoot sightings. Later they said, "We heard them yelling, 'I see it,'" Brad said. "We saw the flash from his weapon, and he shot maybe 20 yards from the side of our tent into the pitch black darkness." Now after this, Brad and his girlfriend decided to leave and report the incident, and park spokeswoman Molly Schroner said that there was an investigation, but the park was safe to visit. Now the statement did not confirm a Bigfoot sighting, but Molly said that no threat remained in the park. So hey, maybe if you ever do see Bigfoot though, maybe don't try and injure him like that. In March 2022 in Big Sur, California, a hiker spotted a very large footprint. Now they took a picture of it next to their own foot for perspective and shared it on Reddit's Bigfoot page, where commenters discussed if they felt the print belonged to a Sasquatch or if it was nothing. But there were plenty of believers. One person wrote, "This is the first imprint I've seen. That clearly isn't a bear. Good find." While another stated, "I wish the print was more fresh, but this really does look like a Bigfoot track," and a third chimed in saying, "What a solid print," and someone else added, "Definitely Sasquatch." The upper foot impression is relative to the lower within diameter of the depth. I'd reach out to your local Bigfoot field researchers organization in your area ASAP, someone else added. Now it honestly does look huge, and to me, you can even see the toe prints, so it seems pretty convincing to me.
You know if it was Bigfoot based on the sound of his steps alone. Here are some bizarre Bigfoot sightings that scientists struggle to explain. The brown footage. Originally uploaded to YouTube over 12 years ago. 12 years people have tried to debunk this, but not one person has been able to. It happens very quickly. But with a trail cam, this person managed to capture a strange, gigantic creature darting from one tree over to the next. At the beginning, we kind of almost see it hiding behind the tree, trying to remain hidden as best as possible before making a quick escape. Its limbs are extremely lengthy as well, and its upper body looking mighty built in comparison to its lower half. Although it could also possibly be mistaken for a human as well, there's just something off about the shape of this guy that just doesn't sit right with me. There's a clear uncanny valley vibe to this creature. The way it moves, the way it swings its arms, it's more animalistic than a regular person. When you live out in the middle of nowhere, you're almost expecting to come across situations that your mind simply can't make sense of. Uploaded to YouTube many years ago, we get a very interesting piece of footage of what appears to look like some sort of bear or giant dog, until this giant creature decides to stand up. Immediately, I'm taken aback by the sudden change in its shape, going from some animal on all fours to standing completely upright, really showing off the intense build this monster has. It was already big while being closer to the ground, but getting a proper perspective of it with all the foliage around it and how far away the camera is, I can only imagine how much bigger this thing would be if the cameraman got a bit closer. Usually Bigfoot likes to hide out in dense forest, so seeing it out in the middle of a field is quite eerie. Capturing footage of Bigfoot without him even being aware is almost too good to be true. Usually we always just see him running off, but in this trail cam video, they managed to capture a supposed Bigfoot just chilling in the middle of the woods. The fact that this video was mainly just Bigfoot staying in place for quite a bit of time, like some animals would, makes me question this piece of so-called footage. It's different from the other Bigfoot videos, which is why it makes it so much more intriguing to me. We're simply just observing it be, wondering what it's going to do next. It keeps you on your toes. Towards the end of the video though, when the camera changes, we get a bit of a jump scare of a giant log being tossed across the camera, and it then switches again to someone or something holding the camera. If anyone threw a rock at your loved ones, wouldn't you be fired up as well to see who did it? This video was uploaded to YouTube by Cabin in the Woods, and a man tells the story about he and his daughter were going along a hiking trail when suddenly his daughter was hit with a rock. She was obviously fine, but it was shocking enough for him to get all dad mode and defensive about it. When he tried to see who threw it, he noticed the large brown stature of the beast in the distance. With his curiosity piqued, that's when he takes out his camera to go and follow it. When he managed to finally catch up to it, the supposed Bigfoot tried to do the whole stay still and camouflage tactic. And man, can they stay super still. You wouldn't even notice it unless he zoomed in. But this guy is not moving. He almost looks like tree bark with the texture of his fur. Based on the cameraman's estimations, his speculation of the creature's height had to be around 9 feet tall. That's terrifying. A standoff with Bigfoot in the middle of nowhere? Yeah, no thanks, I'm good. Unluckily enough for this guy though, whoever was filming it didn't seem to have a choice. This footage was apparently captured in St. Elmo, Illinois back in 2012, and what appeared to be a peaceful day of riding on a snowmobile just turned into recording the most intense Bigfoot standoff to ever exist. With wild animals too, you don't know what they're capable of doing. Although this supposed Bigfoot is just standing there, one thing could easily set him off and he'd suddenly be charging down towards you in a blink of an eye. What really irks me though is that we can see the camera person make a horrible choice at trying to get closer to this thing. Humans are way too curious for their own good. We often forget about our own mortality. Despite his monstrous size, he is the master of camouflage. He will follow in your shadows wherever you go if you accidentally stumble within his territory. These are terrifying Bigfoot sightings that have left the world questioning its existence for years. Coming across the legendary Bigfoot when you're alone in the woods? What exactly do you even do? Thankfully, the cameraman in this video was on an ATV, so even if it did start running at him, they had a better chance at escaping rather than on foot. But as mentioned, our main protagonist of this video is driving along with his ATV in the woods, when all of a sudden, when he's approaching a sharp turn, we get the image of this giant, dark, furry creature right on the edge of the path. Obviously, the ATV rider is absolutely shaken by this encounter, the brain not fully grasping what it was he just saw. I don't even know what I'm looking at. Even when he plays it back in slow-mo, I can't even decipher where the beast's head is at. Needless to say, after taking a few more double takes at the thing, the dude put the pedal to the metal to get far away from whatever it was. When we look at Bigfoot footage, some of them are valuable proof of this showing its absolute sheer force and velocity. This is one of those videos. This was also taken with a trail cam somewhere in the southern parts of the US, and apparently from their explanation is that Bigfoot was trying to scare off a skunk by throwing a rock at it. I know, not much to take away from this, but it's the fact that while they were playing this video of the rock being thrown, you could not see it until you paused the clip. The rock was being thrown so fast that the camera was not able to pick it up under normal speed. What animal can do that in the middle of the woods? And not to mention, at the height it was being thrown at, it's pretty tall. If you ever come across a possible Bigfoot, you run in the other direction. Got it? Bigfoot apparently wants to get into baseball based on this video. Uploaded in September of 2023, a supposed Bigfoot was caught on a trail cam near Banff Park boundary. The description of this video though is that apparently the Bigfoot was giving a warning to a nearby hunter by splitting a log on a tree. It's a little terrifying, I'm not gonna lie, especially the sound that emits after he knocks it against the tree, really showcasing that sheer force we were talking about earlier. This branch literally splits into pieces. That is terrifying. Person in a costume or not, I got the warning and I'll be sure to get out of there ASAP. Sorry to bother you, Mr. Bigfoot, sir. What's worse than seeing a Bigfoot in the woods? A Bigfoot on a snowy mountain. You know how hard it is to run down a mountain covered in snow? Not easy. Two hikers back in the late 90s were recording their journey up along the Himalayas. They were out there for a while before anything weird happened, because it wasn't until they really started getting higher up the mountain that they noticed a strange creature climbing alongside them just a few feet away. No safety gear on this thing, it doesn't have proper suit or shoes for this climb, and it actually looks like it's all one color. It does look like brown fur when the camera zooms in closer. Thankfully, whatever this thing was didn't seem to notice them, because you do not want this wild animal chasing you down a 7,000-meter drop. Usually Bigfoot is found in North America, right? Well, apparently they're also migrating to Russia somehow. This is what the video is labeled as, at least. A supposed Russian Yeti was found running and jumping through these woodland areas back in 2009. It happens all very fast, but I think this is the first footage I've ever seen where this Yeti is running in a more ape-like manner, rather than the typical walking man that most Bigfoot videos show. People in the comment section thought the same thing as me. Everyone called it some sort of gorilla, but when we saw the last few moments of the clip with its arms stretched out, we got to see that famous lanky look that Bigfoot is known to have. It definitely has to be some sort of animal. The movements are way too animalistic for a person to mimic. Could this be an ape? Or an actual Bigfoot appearance? 7 feet tall and weighing over 400 pounds, Bigfoot has become the king of the forests in North America, terrifying the hearts of those that dare try and snag footage of this mysterious creature. Bigfoot makes national news after randomly appearing in Utah. Within the foothills of northeast Provo, a group of guys stopped their truck in the middle of the road because of this bizarre giant creature that caught their eye walking on top of a hill. They knew right away that this wasn't a person based on its monstrous size alone, and the main guy in the video wanted to take it upon himself to hunt down this beast to really prove what they were seeing wasn't just a figment of their imagination. When he took to the mountain, he kept reporting back to his buddies on his walkie-talkie while recording his adventures that he was no longer seeing regular animal footprints. He states, "So I'm seeing something that's not deer tracks anymore. We're trying to determine what it is." Researchers that looked over these videos were highly skeptical that it was Bigfoot, to no one's surprise. But what do you think? The Paul Freeman Bigfoot footage is the clearest piece of evidence that we have about this mysterious creature. Filmed all the way back in 1994, a man named Paul Freeman came across the legendary creature and captured this incredible footage of it crossing through the forest. Its body is massive, covered head to toe in black fur, with an ironically smaller head in comparison to its crazy body structure. I keep playing the scene of where the creature turns its head over towards the man, taking in the stranger for not even more than a second before carrying on its way, completely unbothered that he was being captured on film. It seems like this Bigfoot is probably quite used to people though, considering how he didn't even stop to check out Paul for longer. To this day though, people call it authentic and the best piece of evidence to ever exist. What do you think about it? Do you buy it? The next generations of Bigfoots are mutating at a rapid pace. When we think of Bigfoot, we imagine these ginormous hairy monsters with insane arms and legs, massive backs, but in this video that was uploaded 9 years ago, we see a rare case of a Bigfoot that is the complete opposite. There, crossing through the forest, is this bizarre looking hairy creature with extremely skinny legs and skinny arms, with its head hanging down low and forward. Something is very off about this Bigfoot. Could it possibly just be a coincidence? A juvenile creature? After the man recorded this encounter, he decided to follow it further into the woods, and was thankfully unaware of the man's presence. It's walking as if it might be injured as well, walking extremely slow and sluggish. At some point though, the person recording ended up losing sight of this magnificent monster, and will forever remain a mystery on the internet. Bigfoot was baited out with apples and the smell of rotting meat. Throughout all these years, we still have no idea what the diet of this avoidant creature is. If it's anything like regular animals though, these people had the right idea, setting a trap with those specific items. Out in the middle of the woods, a group of friends placed their delicious treat for the monster just right next to a tree, and laid in wait just a couple of meters away from the spot. Not long after, they heard the sound of twigs breaking and branches snapping. Something big was making its way over to the trap. This 10-foot bipedal creature finally revealed itself, shadowing over the pile of rotting meat and apples and taking a seat. Not wasting any time, the Bigfoot hunters took out their camera to record, but the swiftness in their movement did spark Bigfoot to get up and quickly get out of there, now knowing that it was a trap to get his picture all along. What would you use to lure in Bigfoot? Bigfoot Island has finally been discovered in Ontario. Much like other animals on this planet, some creatures have these dedicated spots where they are free to reproduce and interact with each other in harmony. So obviously this has to be the same for Bigfoot. On an abandoned island somewhere in northern Ontario, a group of teens decided to ignore the no boating area sign and explore the lake that had very little people around. They were going to plan tubing and other risky activities for the day, until one of them pointed out that they saw movement out on an island in the middle of the lake. Taking their boat closer to the mysterious floating land, they noticed a tall, hairy creature walk across the clearing. It was Bigfoot himself. This 9-footer made a brief appearance and absolutely terrified the people on the boat. When they tried to get closer, rocks began to pour down on them, causing the camera to stop rolling when it did. Would you dare visit Bigfoot Island? Bigfoot has been seen all over the world, from experiences being told by supermodels to the video that started it all. Here are Bigfoot stories that might just turn you into a believer. A supermodel captured her own footage of Bigfoot while recording a TV show. Anna Marie Goddard was invited on a talk show to discuss her experience with the legendary creature itself. She describes that she was going up to Redwoods Forest with a film crew to film an episode of Adventures, and while they were up there for 5 days, she captured a moment that Bigfoot decided to crash the party during their break, also known as the Miller footage. Here we can kind of see this giant bipedal creature standing in front of a car, with the headlights just barely giving us proper outline of its body. This happened around 6 p.m., and she recalls 3 of the camera crew men running after the monster with their actual cameras, but nothing came out of it. People ridiculed the talk show host for mocking Anna's story, saying that this is why no one chooses to come forward with their own Bigfoot experiences. A group of tourists captured Bigfoot tearing up the forest with its insane strength. While exploring British Columbia for its beautiful scenery, tourists outside of the country had no idea what a Bigfoot was, or if such a creature could possibly exist. What appeared to first look like a bear absolutely shocked the masses when it began to walk on 2 legs upright. Some people shouted in fear, while others began to quickly run over to capture more footage. In this video that we see, Bigfoot appears to be hunched over and tearing through the mossy floor of the forest. What is it searching for? The group quickly rushed over to the edge of the tree line, snapping their photos. If it didn't make sense with its crazy size, Bigfoot is a terrifyingly strong beast, and if you get yourself too close to it, you better hope you don't accidentally find yourself in the crossfire. If you stumbled upon this while on tour, how would you react? This person had a standoff with Bigfoot after being stalked and hunted down by it. One of the scariest things to encounter when you're alone by yourself in nature is accidentally becoming the next meal for a ferocious predator. We still have no idea the type of food Bigfoot eats, but based on the size alone, I can imagine that meat is high on its menu. While taking out their snowmobile for a spin, everything was fine until they swore that they saw a dark, shadowy figure keep appearing out of the corner of their eye. As they kept going at a decent speed, they noticed that it was keeping up with the speed of their machine. Now being absolutely freaked out, they stopped in the middle of a clearing, and so did Bigfoot. Standing just 20 feet away from them, the person confronts the monster, yelling and making these bizarre hand movements to try and scare it off. Thankfully, it worked, and I don't want to think about what would happen if it didn't. The one that started it all, the Patterson-Gimlin Bigfoot footage. In 1967, footage of the legendary Bigfoot sparked the story storm for the mystery that we all know about today. Shot by Patterson and his friend Gimlin, they managed to snag this photo of Bigfoot walking through the clearing somewhere in Northern California. For years, people have been trying to debunk this, saying that it has been nothing more than a man in a costume, but no one has been able to actually prove it otherwise. Ever since Patterson sadly passed away in 1967, Gimlin to this day denies that he was a part of any hoax that he might have created, and that everything that has happened was genuine and true. Based on what they saw, they estimated that this creature was almost 7 feet tall. I don't know about you, but to me that looks way too good to be a costume. What do you think about the most famous footage to ever be created on this thing? Man nearly gets discovered and hunted down by Bigfoot. If this creature is actually real like these people tend to claim, they are risking their lives. Somewhere in the woods of Tunica, Mississippi, a man was out doing some hunting around his property. What had caught his attention first was the noises that he was hearing out in the distance, first mistaking them for hogs. Then he noticed this beast crouched over near a cypress only 50 yards away from where he was situated. He had never seen anything like it before, and he swears that it was not any type of bear. He states, "It looked like it was digging out the stump. My first instinct was to run. I did not even think of shooting. Then I know no one will believe. It was like everything slowed down. I was scared." He goes on to describe that once he heard a truck in the distance, that's when the creature stood up, showing its full height. And to his estimation, it was also 7 feet tall. He wasted no time in running after that.
Is Bigfoot a myth, a misidentified animal, or proof of an undiscovered species? In California's Marble Mountains, a youth group set out to what they thought would be a typical hike. That is until they stumbled upon something hairy and extraordinary. From their vantage point, they captured footage of a large, upright figure moving deliberately along a distant ridge. Almost Bigfooty the way it was moving. The figure's towering height and deliberate movements ruled out any known local wildlife. Clearly it wasn't an animal, it was something doing something. And adding to the mystery, the group discovered this massive nest-like shelter constructed from snapped branches, raising questions about what could have created it. Maybe it was a big beaver, who knows? Over the years, the photo became a point of debate. I mean, obviously, is it real, is it fake? While some cryptid enthusiasts consider it one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for Bigfoot's existence, skeptics argue that the figure could have easily been a person in a costume, because yes, those exist. Have you seen Avatar? I mean, I'll believe anything. In Utah's scenic Provo Canyon, 2 hikers unexpectedly captured one of the most viral Bigfoot encounters of the modern era. Weird brag? While exploring a scheduled area, they noticed a crouched dark figure near the trees and initially thought that it might have been a bear, which is terrifying enough. But as they moved closer, I don't know why you'd go closer to a bear, the creature stood its full height, towering above them. Terrified, they froze in place until a figure began to charge towards them. This, of course, prompted their panicked retreat. Though the hikers managed to get a blurry photo of the encounter, skeptics were quick to dismiss it as a bear or a prank. Yet many who analyze the footage point out the creature's human-like movements, claiming that it was something far more mysterious. What do you think? On a quiet day in British Columbia, Jenny Chapman and her 3 children were startled by the sight of a massive, hairy figure approaching their home. Overwhelmed with fear, they quickly fled to safety, only to watch from afar as the creature, again towering over 7 feet tall, roamed through their yard. That is terrifying. I would move. The being's long, swinging arms and the intense animalistic gaze left a lasting impression on the family, of course. So when investigators arrived later, they found these enormous footprints in the area, these big footprints, far larger than any humans, lending credibility to the encounter, right? Yeah, was John Goodman in our backyard? Who could have done this? In 1978, the legend of the Ohio Grassman erupted when a family in Ohio reported a terrifying encounter with an enormous, dark, furred creature. A lot of questions. They claimed their home came under attack with rocks hurled at the property by what they described as an 8-foot-tall, ape-like being. Very specific, sounds a lot like Bigfoot. Now the Grassman, believed to inhabit the forest of Salt Fork State Park, has since become a subject of fascination for cryptid hunters. Reports of strange nests, again with those nests, towering tree structures, and unnervingly large footprints have all been linked to this elusive creature. What do we think? Is this another case of Bigfoot, or is it just John Goodman leaving footprints in the ground again? Comment down below. Deep in the wilderness of Washington's Skookum Meadow, researchers from the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization made a remarkable discovery. While conducting a field study, they found a massive impression in the mud that appeared to depict the body of this large, upright creature. The cast, now known as the Skookum cast, preserved details of what appeared to be a hip, thigh, and even strands of hair. Yuck. Adding to intrigue to this find, the cast was discovered near bait left out by the researchers, suggesting that the creature had reclined in the mud while reaching for the food. He's a little piggy, that Bigfoot. While skeptics argue the impression might have been made by an elk or other large animals, enthusiasts want to point at the unique anatomical features captured in the cast as evidence of Sasquatch, aka Bigfoot. So to this day, the Skookum cast remains a centerpiece of debate among cryptid researchers and skeptics as well. From spine-chilling encounters deep in the wilderness to puzzling evidence that defies explanation, these 5 Bigfoot sightings reveal why this elusive figure remains one of the greatest mysteries of our time. As wildfires raged through Nevada's Battle Mountain back in 1999, firefighters battling the blaze reportedly had an encounter that defied explanation. Amid the smoke and destruction, they discovered a massive humanoid creature, over 7 feet tall, with reddish hair and obvious burns. Now, what made the sighting so chilling here was the creature's behavior. It remained calm, even cooperative, as medical personnel treated its injuries. Witnesses noted its intelligence and striking resemblance to Bigfoot described in these countless accounts. The story took an even stranger turn when government officials allegedly arrived and took the creature away. They just took him somewhere, leaving witnesses sworn to secrecy. Now, was this real? Was this a rare live Sasquatch caught in the wild, or just a crazy myth? Either way, the Battle Mountain fire encounter remains one of the most fascinating cryptid stories in recent history. In the murky swamps of Fouke, Arkansas, terror struck when locals reported sightings of the Boggy Creek monster, towering, a 7-foot-tall creature with glowing red eyes. I mean, it's pretty hard to miss. The monster gained notoriety after attacking livestock, leaving behind these enormous footprints, and reportedly trying to break into homes. Imagine looking out your window and seeing that guy. Its eerie appearances throughout the 1970s inspired the cult horror film The Legend of Boggy Creek. This story is so popular there's a movie, okay? This solidified the creature's place in cryptid lore. Now, witness accounts describe a massive, hair-covered beast lurking in the shadows of the swamp, presence haunting the residents of Fouke. Now, whether it's fact, Fouke, or folklore, the Boggy Creek monster remains one of America's most infamous swamp-dwelling legends. Could be Bigfoot, I don't know, sounds pretty close. During the 1960s, a mysterious sideshow attraction called the Minnesota Iceman captivated audiences across the United States. Encased in ice, the bizarre creature had ape-like limbs, a human-like face, and a body covered in hair. Again, sounds like our man Bigfoot. Now, cryptozoologist Ivan Sanderson and Bernard Heuvelmans examined the specimen, now claiming that it was a previously unknown species. However, the story took a weird twist when the original specimen was suddenly replaced with a replica, and the original just vanished without a trace. Is it because we caught on? Is that why we asked too many questions? To this day, the true nature of the Minnesota Iceman, the real one, remains a mystery, leaving us to wonder whether it was a clever hoax or a genuine cryptid discovery frozen literally in time. In Washington's remote Ape Canyon, great name if you're Bigfoot, a group of miners experienced a terrifying night that they would never forget. After reportedly seeing a wild man, they endured a relentless assault as unseen attackers just hurled rocks at their cabin and unleashed these crazy, weird, loud, horror film-like screams throughout the night. Again, sounds like a nightmare. Getting rocks thrown at you while people are yelling? What's going on? The miners barricaded themselves inside, armed and terrified, as their shelter was under attack. By morning, the attackers that they couldn't see had vanished, but massive footprints were found surrounding their cabin. This chilling encounter gave Ape Canyon its name and remains one of the most infamous and harrowing stories in the Bigfoot lore. Yeah, now he's hucking rocks? What's this guy doing? What do you want from us? The Patterson-Gimlin film. When it comes to Bigfoot sightings, none are more iconic than the Patterson-Gimlin film, shot near Bluff Creek, California. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin's 59-second footage depicts a massive creature, famously named Patty, just striding through the forest. You've probably seen parodies of this video. In the movie Elf, Will Ferrell walks like this in a scene. he's parroting this video. The creature briefly looks back at the camera as if aware it's being observed. And again, it's walking all human Bigfoot-like. Decades of analysis have failed to definitively debunk the film, with experts divided over whether it's evidence of Bigfoot or if it was just an elaborate hoax this entire time. We still have no idea either way. Now, despite technological advances, the film remains as mysterious as ever, keeping the legend of Bigfoot alive for now.
Big, terrifying, with immeasurable strength. The legend of Bigfoot has haunted these forests in North America long enough. Let's check out some alleged footage of this monster. Bigfoot was caught scaling a mountain. During a camping trip, a youth group called the Campus Life stumbled upon an experience like no other. While setting up their campfire, one of the boys pointed out something large going across the mountain in front of them. The leader pointed the camera over to the hill, and there at the very top is an extremely tall but lanky creature walking along the tippy top. Given that this footage was filmed in 2001, it's hard to make out exactly what this creature is, but it is massive. Simply by comparison to the trees and distance, a normal person would have appeared smaller. The person recording truly believed it was Bigfoot, saying, to quote, "jumping up and down and shaking its fist at them." He seemed to be aggravated that these people were in its territory, or so they said. What do you think about this older video? Bigfoot was seen crossing a Michigan river. You never know what you're going to capture while on a camping trip. Maybe even the legendary Bigfoot. This family, while canoeing, managed to do just that. While canoeing the peaceful rivers of Michigan, the family noticed something large in the distance just at the tree line. At first they thought it was some sort of bear, but then they realized that it was walking on 2 feet. The creature must have been at least 9 feet tall from what they could see, and as it slowly came out of the woods, they knew exactly what they were encountering with. Bigfoot himself started to cross the stream right in front of them, with the water not even reaching its hip. Despite the water being quite deep, he was making it across with such ease. The family recorded every second of it, which is what we are witnessing now. What are your thoughts? The Harley Hoffman video is one of the best pieces of evidence of Bigfoot out there. Very little is known about Harley Hoffman. In fact, all we know is that he took this mysterious video of Bigfoot trekking through the woods. Somewhere out in Georgia, Bigfoot has made himself known. His size is massive, probably at least 8 to 9 feet tall, with an enormous back and pitch black colored fur. His strides are long and wide, and he doesn't seem to notice that Harley Hoffman is there. Many people in the comments below seem to agree with this, believing it's solid evidence of the creature, with some stating that this is also what they saw back in the 90s, and some skeptics finally questioning his existence. I personally do think it's way too big to be a suit, especially for a simple home video. It does not look like a costume, but what do you think? Bigfoot was caught with a drone camera. Drones are one of the best things to have been invented, because we've captured so much of the unknown with these things. Bigfoot may be stealthy, but our drone cameras are stealthier. I'm not entirely sure who the uploader of this video is, or when it was put on the internet, but we have some striking footage of this creature taking strides through the woods. Simply watching the way it walks, the way its strides are so wide, making me question how big this thing actually is. Although it looks like it's walking like a person, there are some moments that it looks awkward, kind of like a young human. It still has that animal feel to it, at least from my perspective. The man filming stated he wanted to get in a little closer, but was fearful that the creature would destroy the camera if it got too close. Bigfoot makes a daring escape from a lake during a tour. This tour group wanted to take some really cool footage of the mountains out in Oregon, but what they captured was something so much more thrilling. While posing for the photo, on the far right of the video, we see this tiny little black speck emerge from the water and bolt across the field. One of the people there pointed it out when they noticed it beelining towards the rolling hills. The weirdest thing is trying to understand why Bigfoot was in the water. Was it possibly hunting, only to run away once it noticed the group of people there? Why would it run from people? Could it possibly be a juvenile Bigfoot startled by humans intervening on their land? So many questions to consider, but what are your thoughts on this bizarre footage? Before you know it, it's too late. Bigfoot has finally managed to catch up to you in the middle of the woods with nowhere to go. Let's check out some crazy Bigfoot footage that people managed to capture over the years. These two buddies captured Bigfoot on a trail camera. Trail cams are an amazing and sneaky way to capture live footage of the wildlife, even supposed mythological creatures. This footage they presented to the camera was bizarre. This bear-like looking creature standing on 2 feet walking past the camera. It happened in the middle of the night, and when they were watching back the footage, they couldn't believe what it was they caught on camera. Its body is massive and round, with equally as big arms at its side. The guys seem very proud of the footage they caught, and they should be. It doesn't look like a person in a costume. It doesn't even look human enough to be considered a person person playing dress up. Its hands and feet also look similar to monkeys, which makes sense, and honestly, it just makes it look like a really beefy monkey. But what do you think? A juvenile Bigfoot was captured on a biking trail. Ever thought about taking a bike ride through woodland trails? No matter what might be out there. While taking on the risk, this trail rider decided to record his experience with a GoPro camera. While coming around the bend, there in the middle of the road is a tiny black little speck. It completely throws the rider off course, immediately turning the handles and guiding himself straight into the brush. Now, the hashtags under the video are stated to be Bigfoot sighting, so we'll keep it as such. However, the dangers of being around a younger Bigfoot is quite high, because you never know where mama might be lurking about. He had the right emotional reaction for this scenario. However, not many people were all too convinced and believed that it was just a black bear. Your thoughts? Bigfoot was captured in someone's backyard. It's more comforting to experience this monster when it's out in the middle of nowhere. But what happens when it's right outside your front door? While playing out in the backyard, a father noticed something lurking in the trees at the very back. Thinking it was a raccoon or something, he thought nothing of it, until it began to stand up, and he got the full picture of the terrifying creature. It was a 10-foot Bigfoot that was only 20 feet away from them. He managed to capture the image at just the right moment before it dipped into hiding behind the shed. You can hear the crunching of the trees beneath its massive weight as it makes its grand exit. Towards the end of the clip as well, we hear a massive roar emerge from the beast, startling the man with the camera to end the clip abruptly. What would you do? A Bigfoot was captured out in the Canadian woods. North America seems to be a hotspot for Bigfoot sightings, and especially in Canada, there seems to be more stories like this emerging on the internet. These investigators were given footage of a supposed Bigfoot ducking out of view in front of the camera. We don't see much of the creature aside from its massive furry back. Its fur doesn't look like a bear's. It definitely looks thicker, as well as it appears there are a bit of trap muscles on him as well. It does just look like a beefier person, but I don't think it's a costume. These investigators take it upon themselves to try and recreate the same video to really compare the size difference to help prove its legitimacy. From this, they were able to get a really good comparison on how much bigger the creature actually was. Bigfoot was accidentally seen while filming a movie. During their time on Prince Edward Island, a group of film students accidentally caught the mysterious creature running into frame while they were shooting some footage for a project. While the director shouted action, the first actor began running towards the camera, only for our point of view to capture this wild footage of a monster running across the field at full sprint. Some say it was a bear, but this one was clearly running on 2 feet upright. The cameraman is absolutely shocked by this and begins to run after it to try and get some more footage. It's terrifying to think that if the actor stayed there any second longer, he would have been crushed in its wake. What are your thoughts on this footage? Could this be the one that concludes this mystery once and for all? Do you have any Bigfoot footage you want to share? Send it to us and I'll be sure to talk about it in the next video.